And now I'd like to open the meeting to the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Jeremy.
I am grateful tonight for all who read during the Wednesday testimony meetings. Each week, they consistently work to give wonderful readings. These readings often meet a need in my life, and I usually end up working with some of the text in the days afterward. As an example, last week's readings had this from Miscellaneous Writings by Mary Baker Eddy. The Christian Scientist loves man more because he loves God most. And this week, from Science and Health, also by Mrs. Eddy, look away from the body into truth and love, the principle of all happiness, harmony, and immortality. I'm certain I'll be working with both statements for a while. I'm grateful also for how, in the days before the meeting, the readers send in the hymn selections and citations so we can get those on the website. That's always a great help. It amazes me how much work goes on in this church week after week, and it is easy to see that only God and the love for Him could bring all of this about. I'm grateful for God bringing me here and for daily practitioner support that keeps me a part of this church's mission for the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Shahidat from Maryland. Go ahead.
Around this time last year, I began to feel very disenchanted with my current position and was plagued by thoughts of unfulfillment and dissatisfaction. I had recently finished a temporary assignment at another federal agency, and while they wanted to hire me and I wanted to work there, the bureaucratic process made it impossible to do so at that time. I was feeling incredibly frustrated and just miserable upon my return to my permanent position. I had rationalized in my head that I had nothing left to give or learn in my current job, and I just wanted out. I couldn't get past this strong desire to move on, and I wanted it to happen yesterday. I reached out to a Plainfield practitioner via email with my issue, and she wrote back stating that my place was fixed in principle and was uniquely mine to fill. I worked with this and truths I found in the articles on place and another by Peter V. Ross called Dignity of Work and Business on our website. Slowly, I came to realize that I became to release those feelings of unfulfillment. And one day while I was sitting at my home office, it occurred to me that I needed to better exemplify certain godlike qualities at work. So on separate sticky notes, I wrote out the 4 words: patience, humility, love, and compassion. And it became my job each day to demonstrate those qualities at work. And as I did this more often, I felt more content at work, and my supervisors noticed how I became a more valuable contributor. I felt great in that I was truly blossoming where I was planted. That position that I had earlier wanted so bad eventually became available. I applied, interviewed, and was offered the role. I understand now that that position could only be mine when I was truly ready for it, as planned by God, and not a moment sooner. I'm very grateful to the practitioner that helped me understand that my circumstances would not change until I genuinely changed my thought and understood that God was my employer and will guide me to where I need to be at exactly the right time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Day from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for tonight's readings and for this meeting. In working with my practitioner in this church while expecting my first child almost 2 years ago, I learned the value of true healing, which brings about progressive and permanent change. I learned the value of humility, which enabled me to ask for practitioner help in the first place. At the time, she was someone who didn't know me well, though she joyfully and willingly agreed to help. I learned the value of obedience by calling my practitioner regularly and following her instruction as best I could. I learned the value of confidence and courage, which comes from a commitment to God and seeking and accepting His truth and verdict over all else. This became most helpful when I was bombarded by negative opinions, possible outcomes such as birth defects and abnormalities, and unimaginable worst-case scenarios suggested by various medical professionals during my regular doctor visits. possibly most valuable was learning the importance of selflessness. As the months went on, I realized that this healing experience was not about me. It was preparing me to be a greater help to others who may be faced with similar challenges, if ever I was led to do so. Several months after my daughter was born, there was a lady on a reality TV show who expressed great fear and sadness while explaining to a loved one that she had been told by her doctors that her unborn daughter was underweight and that ultimately the child's life was in jeopardy. I immediately saw this as an opportunity to work in truth, as several months prior I had been told the very same thing. I worked with truths that had been shared by my practitioner, which declared the absolute perfection of God's idea and our Father's dominion over all. I later learned that the young woman's daughter was born in perfect health, just as mine had been. Lastly, I learned the value of God's provision. I wasn't sure just how I would be able to pay my practitioner at the time, but I eventually realized that it was useless to dwell so much on the amount of money rather than focusing on the importance of expressing gratitude for this invaluable experience. I was led to give what I could monetarily, and I'm most grateful that I have been given the opportunity to continue this expression through work for this church in return for this life-transforming learning opportunity. I'm so grateful to be a part of the consistent good that's going on here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chardell from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Well, thank you, and thank you for this lovely service. Recently, wrong human thinking was brought to my attention, and as soon as this was told to me by my practitioner, I recognized what I was doing incorrectly. When I am willing to listen to correction, I find that I gain humility and a deeper spiritual understanding. Along with the practitioner's prayers and study, many spiritual ideas came to me. I would like to share two things that have been a great help. The first is from our weekly watch found on the Plainfield website on the carousel where there is a picture of a cardinal. The last paragraph states, "Our task is to withdraw from the objects of sense all belief, life, truth, intelligence, and substance in order to give these qualities back to mind, or God, where they belong. Then we can see all things in creation as symbols pointing to God, with God back of them. The objects of sense will then disappear as matter, and God's spiritual ideas will appear." And the second, from the Addresses by Martha Wilcox, says, quote, "We do not attach erroneous conditions to actual man, but we deal with the erroneous condition as an untrue image or deflection entirely separate and apart from actual man," end quote. And I thank God and his Christ, also Mary Baker Eddy, and our ever alert and loving practitioners, and our dear Plainfield Church Independent. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara or Ken from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Hi, it's Barbara. Last week, while thinking of a less than pleasant appointment with an eye doctor the day before where I hadn't felt love for him, the thought came, I'm better than him. Wrong. Immediately came the thought, well, there's the culprit, meaning, of course, the mistake of thinking myself better than someone else. I was surprised by that thought, but grateful to be awakened to it. It reminded me of a couple of things. One, a Bible admonition from 1 Peter, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour." Second, this church's emphasis on watching when thinking. And then the idea that the way to love more is to stop hating. And as I understand it, anything less than love is hate. There has also apparently been some resentment in my thought that this medical treatment has even seemed necessary. Something more to correct, and certainly not the doctor's fault. Thanks be to God that He doesn't ever give up on us, and that His law uncovers errors in our thinking that they may be corrected. Thanks for this good church service and the opportunity to share my thoughts, and thank you for making the writings of so many good thinkers available to us on plainfield.com.
Thank you. Janet from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you, Bruce. I would like to express gratitude for the many blessings I've had over the years through the study of Christian Science. What I consider to be one of my very big blessings was God directing me to this church. I cannot adequately express what this has meant to me and my family. My sister and I are attending Unity Watches, Roundtable, and church services together. And this means so much to me since she lives in New Jersey and I live here in Georgia. If for some reason we've not spoken in a few days, I look forward to hearing her voice during the Unity Watches. And when we do talk, sometimes we end our conversation, she'll say, "See you in church." Thank you, Plainfield, for having the vision to use the internet for broadcasting all of the activities and church services. Thank you for the wonderful website, which I use daily, and it never fails to meet any of my needs. Your selfless dedication in maintaining this church, website, and all activities are a blessing and a light for the world. In Science and Health, we read, "What blesses one, blesses all." Thank you for the beautiful readings tonight and every part of this very powerful service.
Thank you. Mike from New York, go ahead.
Thank you for this wonderful meeting, the wonderful readings, and I am so grateful to be able to participate. This morning when I got up, I didn't feel very well. After reading the lesson sermon, for some reason I decided I had to keep working on the situation. That reason was because I'm learning here at Plainfield not only that one shouldn't suffer with a claim, but also how to deal with it. From the past Bible study and this week's lesson on the prophet Elisha, I decided to read 2 Kings from the beginning, and I made it to chapter 9 when I finally began to feel some peace. I then called a Plainfield practitioner about some other issues when the phone got disconnected. When I redialed and hit send, I found my daughter on the line instead of the practitioner. This is her second week off at college, and I haven't heard much from her, which I've been wanting to deal with verbally, but haven't. Another lesson I'm learning with great difficulty here, to let God do the work. She gave a list of grievances about her roommate and so on. After listening about a potential move and actually some rather thoughtful remedies, I pointed out that the whole situation was not being handled through God and Christian Science. It needs to be dealt with in her mind first and foremost. My daughter admitted this was true and that she had let things Christian Science slide, and then she had to go to class, so we hung up. I am so very grateful for what I'm learning here at Plainfield, which made me apply Christian Science prayer earlier, even though I didn't know the specific reason. I'm grateful to have the prayerful tools to share with my daughter to enable her to work her way through these illusions of tribulations. It was not always thus, unfortunately. I did a lot of stumbling and bumbling early on in Christian Science. Thankfully, I've had enough demonstrations to keep with this, and am even more grateful for what I'm learning here at Plainfield that is making my prayer much more scientific. I am so grateful for God for the wonderful Christian Science that he has provided through Christ Jesus, and Mary Baker Eddy.
Thank you. Tom from New York, go ahead.
Hello, and thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm grateful for the watch this week. When I read it, it was not exactly obvious to me what I was supposed to learn from this. So it made me think. So it was a little bit of work with this watch this week, and I kind of appreciated that because why would we love food and, we should avoid hating food or something like that, and, I think the lesson, and people have written in form on this, that, my expectation is from God, so what good we see, we need to recognize that it's from God, and that's where it's coming from, and so that's kind of what I got out of the watch. So anyway, so appreciate that very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Linda from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for all that you're offering tonight in the service. It's wonderful to have it in the middle of the week. I'm very grateful for last week's Sunday's roundtable on the Beatitude, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God," and also for the instruction from my practitioner, Plainfield practitioner last week, for me to purify my thinking about the world around me. Before Plainfield, this and the other Beatitudes seemed unattainable and out of reach. The practical science of Christ taught here has been opening my limited thinking. A member once shared on an older forum, "Blessed are the pure in heart. You must be willing to rid yourself of error." The other day while driving, I made a concerted effort to take my attention and my thoughts and change any that were negative, such as worry, pressure, criticism, etc. It was more than just positive thinking. I have tried that, and it has never been effective. That was just willpower. This thinking was based on the principles and rules from the Bible. I used simple ideas that I could feel, like I turned to gratitude, joy, and affirmation of God's allness. I have heard others testify of doing this and seeing the world all around them in a new light and feeling a sense of love. I had this experience this time. Even the plants seemed more beautiful to me. I'm beginning to realize, quote from one of, I think the article by Mrs. Eddy on body, "We only see according to our thought, our degree of enlightenment." I am grateful for the glimpse into this important principle. There are also many wonderful articles on our website for anyone interested, such as one that was in the July Love is the Liberator called Purity on this same topic, and it's very helpful. Thank you, everybody, for this wonderful service, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Benjamin.
Thank you. I feel so happy to be here tonight, and also to hear those wonderful testimonies and the readings. A few years ago, a practitioner in this church gave me a statement for any time I feel like confused or threatened or afraid of anything or whatsoever, that I should say to myself, as I know it, that God is mind, God is the only mind, God is my mind, and also God is the only pure mind. And this statement has been so powerful and very been working for me, and I'm sure a lot of people have used it also in this church, because it was we are also taught to use it every once in a while. if you see somebody, even somebody you work with, or you're walking on the street, you see somebody who is living in fear or who is doing something and out of fear, you say to yourself, you don't have to say to that person, but if you have the opportunity to do so, but knowing the truth to yourself, that God is the only pure mind, take care of the situation. At my job, sometimes I have to drive a lot from one place to another, and by doing so, I see a lot of things, happy things and non-happy things. And those opportunities, I see as opportunity for me to use the truth that I've been taught here. Most recently, I think it was 2 days ago, I was driving, and I came across somebody who was having difficulties of some kind. I don't know what it was, but the thought came to me that that person was actually driving in fear. Maybe that person was new to driving, or maybe that person saw something. And the truth came to me to know the truth that nobody should live in fear, because it's not the truth about anybody or about me. And I said to myself that God is my mind, and God is the only pure mind, and God is mind. And also that also applied to that very person. That took care of the situation. And I know absolutely that that person will be right, and nobody, no child of God will be in any harm, because God governs, and God is our mind, and God is everybody's mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Lil.
I am so grateful for God's loving care when we're doing right, no matter what the situation. Recently, a friend came by my apartment to drop off something. On his way out of the residence building, the sun shining brightly through the glass panel next to the building's door caused him to bang into and crack the glass. I thanked God he was not hurt at all. I then went up to the management office to report what had happened so they could have the glass replaced. The gal in the office quite indignantly said they would replace it, but the expense was not their responsibility. She said the bill would be passed over to my management company, as I'm a renter and not a unit owner, and they would probably pass it back to me to pay, and it amounted to $400. Being honest to them about what had happened, I hadn't expected all this to unfold. I went home and called my practitioner and explained the situation. She also felt the expense was not my responsibility and said God rewards honesty and not pursue it any further. She would be praying for the situation. In 5 days, the window was replaced, and now, 5 days later, nothing more has been said about it. I can't thank God enough for this, his wonderful working out of the situation, and I'm also very grateful for the prayers of the practitioner. And thank you for those wonderful readings.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you to all those who have given testimonies tonight, and also to thank all the church members who participate in the watches and prayers for our meetings. I just want to say tonight that more and more I'm appreciating this great question, consciousness, where art thou? I find that it applies in every area of life. It is important that when making decisions, I check this question. It makes me know that I'm checking my motives, not outlining, planning, or making decisions based on opinions or material knowledge. It has also been very helpful in situations when decisions have to be made with other people.
in those times how it's been helpful is that when I've felt inspired to make a suggestion and it's opposed, I can trust God with it and know that if it is His will, then the idea will come to pass in His good time. This is because asking consciousness, where art thou, prior to making these suggestions means I'm taking my personal motives out of it. It also means that if anything negative comes up, be it physical claim, employment issues, money concerns, and all of that, I can still check. Where is my thinking? Where is my consciousness? I am so grateful for these lessons because they help put away the habit of worry, anxiety, and any fears, and help us to have greater understanding of God's unfailing power. So grateful to Mrs. Eddy for that question. Consciousness, where art thou? Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff from North Carolina, go ahead.
I just wanted to express my gratitude for being able to be on this church service and to be able to listen to the testimonies, the music, and to listen to the many offerings that are on the website of readings from different authors that inspire me. And I wanted to write up a testimony, but instead, before church started, I needed to write an email to someone that I owed money to and had been putting off. And I felt like I was neglecting this much too long. I was able to write up the email and say exactly what I needed to say, and I was very grateful to having gotten it done, as my practitioner at Plainfield had suggested that I needed to express myself with my finances, for my gratitude to God for the things that He's done for me and for other people here at the church. And I just want to thank you so much for this evening. Goodbye.
Thank you. Mary.
This is from our church website bulletin board, Pennsylvania. I wish to thank Elizabeth for the inspired and heart-lifting reading last night, that was last week, on Love the Lord Thy God. These beautiful readings will go out to bless all mankind and bring comfort to the hungry searchers for truth. And then Costa Rica. The reading of the article Consciousness by Martha Wilcox, read by Carol, is fantastic. It's on our audio on our website. It hit me right between the eyes. It is so clear and powerful, the base and backbone of this science. Once understood, it will enable us to stand. Same goes for the article by Kimball on our daily quote lift, Laugh Out Loud. I share it with the world on my Facebook and outreach. Thank you to Carol. And then an email from Wisconsin. Thank you for the roundtable on purification. This was something I didn't know or understand for a long time. When difficult times happened, I just blamed myself and became distressed. Now I know this is a call to rise higher and part of this purification process. What an important service this church is doing by teaching real Christian Science. Many years ago, when I was a young child, I became very ill. I'm not sure what the problem was anymore, but as I recall, it was before my family came into Christian Science. But I remember that my mother came into my bedroom and sat by my bed, and she read me the story that's in this week's lesson, and it was the story of the Shunammite woman. And I can remember even though I'd been so ill. As she read that story, I became enthralled with every detail of it. I remember picturing the stool and the table and the candlestick that the woman had prepared for the holy man, Elisha, and how she had kept this corner of her house for him, and how he had been so grateful and lovingly gave her a child through prayer that she had so longed for. And then the story of how her son had been raised from the dead by Elisha. And I can remember now how vivid that story was in my mind at that time. And by the next morning, I was completely healed of that physical problem that I was having. And I thought, I'm so grateful for the teaching I've received here, how important it is to give our children, our youth, certainly our young children, the Bible, the truth, now, of course, science and health, and how they are like little sponges, that they just absorb it so, and it's so easy and natural for them. This afternoon, I was reading Mrs. Eddy's message for 1900, and she states in that, any mystery in Christian Science departs when dawns the spiritual meaning thereof, and the spiritual sense of the Scriptures is the scientific sense which interprets the healing Christ. A child can measurably understand Christian Science, for through his simple faith and purity, he takes in its spiritual sense that puzzles the man. The child not only accepts Christian Science more readily than the adult, but he practices it. This notable fact proves that the so-called fog of this science obtains not in the science, but in the material sense which the adult entertains of it. I'm so grateful for Mrs. Eddy, for her clear interpretation of the Scriptures. I'm grateful for all the practitioner help I've had through the years, the training that I've received. I'm grateful for this wonderful church, this wonderful service tonight, the readings, the beautiful heartfelt testimonies. It has taken a life of its own. All of you are learning this science, learning how to practice it, to purify thought, so you can become as a little child and accept the teaching and have the healing that it offers. Thank God for Christian Science.
Thank you.